I've known Venerable Amy for a long time, maybe 20 some years now. And she's a wonderful teacher. She has been in None since I think 2000, maybe. I think that's when I met you. And something like the 99, maybe 2000. And she's been she's been a director of Vajrapani, one of the first retreat center in North America. She was an assistant to one of the great lamas, Kirti Sanchab Rinpoche. She was a director in Milarepa Center. So she has done many, many retreats and teachings all over the world. So we are really fortunate to have Venerable Amy here. So thank you, Venerable. And it'll be a treat.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. Thank you so much. I want to thank Shanka. I want to thank Thupten Norbaling, Heather. I want to thank everybody who's made this possible. Thank you so much. And thank you to all of you for joining. So we will, oh, sorry, please.
Go ahead. I was just going to ask you, whenever you want to start with the prayers, we can.
Yeah, I don't know if we need to do any formal prayer. I mean, we'll set a motivation. Is that okay? Or do you have prayers that you want to do?
Well, that's fine, but I would like to do the Mandela Offering, if I may.
Sure, just short. Just short.
Okay. Maybe you can put that on the screen, Heather, if you wouldn't mind. The short month, So,
and again, for everybody, it's very kind to Shanka to do this. And this is kind of more traditional. When we have a teaching, what we like to try to do is create the causes, the conditions to have the teaching go well, the retreat go well, and that we can get the most out of it and things like that. And so traditionally, the Mandala Offering is a symbol of the universe. And it was to kind of symbolize the Tibetans or ancient days, you would bring your most precious jewel and offer it to get one little line of the Lam Rim, to get one teaching. And now the teachings, there's so much going on. And we've kind of lost the air of generosity. We don't really think about offering or what we need. We've lost that train really. So it's nice. The Mandala Offering brings us back to that of how to create the conditions for the Dharma to flow in your life. That's what generosity is really about. So thank you.
Okay. So we'll do this part in Tibetan, and I'll do this part in Tibetan, and then the rest of it just in English. Saji Pati Jokshi Me Tuk Ni de Gen Padi Sangye Jindu Mikde Huwa Iruku Namada Jingla Chubarshu. A holy and perfect pure Lama from the clouds of compassion that form in the sky of Dharmakaya wisdom, please release a rain of vast and profound Dharma precisely in accordance with the needs of those to be trained. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamniriyatayami.
Thank you. So let's just take a moment and we're going to jump into our motivation and get that oriented. Let's take a moment to just sit. So finding a comfortable posture for your body, perfectly fine if you are seated in a chair, and just have your feet flat on the floor or on a cushion on the floor, whatever's most comfortable for you. The main part is to have the spine as extended as possible. And just find that comfortable meditation posture. If you're seated on a cushion on the floor, that's fine. And what you really want to do is make sure your body is as relaxed as possible. So just check that your shoulders are relaxed, the neck is relaxed, the head is slightly tipped forward a little bit, subdued. Eyes are lightly closed. As you do this, begin to deepen your respiration. So we can't just plunk down on a seat and think the meditation space will arise for us. Really need to disengage a bit of all of that neurological activity. So every time we inhale, imagine you're bringing space into your body and mind, opening up the channels, all that subtle system of the body, opening up any space in the tension you might be holding. You might find you're holding tension in your forehead, your jaw, lower back perhaps, or neck and shoulders. And every exhalation, as best as you can, allow some of that tension to release, let it go. And I want you to imagine as if this was your last day, as if this is your last day right now. Imagine if this is the last Dharma class you'll ever attend. So it's a little bit of a jolt to the system, perhaps. Okay, and don't feel that you're going to be creating your death by having these thoughts. Because I've been doing this, I do this every morning when I wake up. This is my last day. How would I like the day to go? And I haven't died yet. Okay. I will one day. It hasn't come yet. Could be tonight. I just want you to think about this, reflect for a moment. If this were my last day right now, and I know we're at the end of the day, coming into the end of your day, but this is an exercise for you to do tomorrow morning when you wake up, as if it's going to be your last day. Okay? So you may have an idea, how would I like the day to go? Well, we'd like the day to be nice, pleasant, happy, absolutely. We don't want any problems to show up, anything interfering with our agenda. But then life happens. So instead of being concerned with the doing of the day, what about the meaning of the day? Can you lend more meaning to your remaining moments of this life, whether it is just tonight or whether you get another 20 years? Can you lend more meaning from this moment forward? So of course, you need to know what meaning is in your life, what that means to you, what it makes the day most meaningful. On this path, we're often focused on helping others. In fact, helping all living beings. Not just others, all living beings, and that includes ourselves. But we often are trying to think of others more than ourselves. But along the way, you realize there's a passage where we also need some kindness and compassion toward ourselves as well in order to make the path more positive. To be able to practice compassion and kindness to others when we're practicing that with ourselves. So just reflect right now, if this, as if was your last evening. And feel free if you want to jot down a few notes. What lends meaning to your life? Can you realistically think of a way that you can adjust a few things in your life that will help you lend more meaning for the rest of your life? What realistically, think of one or two adjustments you could make right now in your daily activities that can give you more space to practice Dharma. So in setting our motivation right now for this evening and this weekend, just also let's add in all the beings we can imagine around the planet. Some of them are in our own communities, some of them really struggling right now. We can imagine places like India, racked with COVID. The Middle East has heated up again. Many people have died recently in the last few days. Could name many places around the planet, some of them very close to you, where people are really struggling right now. So the reason we want to practice Dharma more, if that's something you're interested in, not only does it make you happier and more balanced, but ultimately, if you can become a Buddha, a fully awakened being, you have every capacity, every ability perfectly to know the best thing to think about someone or to think about a situation, the best way to respond, the best thing to say. Every moment you breathe, you live in that space, perfectly benefiting all living beings. If that's something that interests you, please fold that into your motivation right now, taking a moment to set that positive intention for our time this evening, all the events of the rest of this day, and to really have a wonderful weekend retreat. So please relax. And can you just share the Refuge Prayer that we can recite together? Do you happen to have that? Is that easy? Thank you. So this Refuge Prayer is something we often do at the beginning of teachings, after the Mandala Offering. And thank you for sharing your screen. And really, this kind of contains the whole path in a sense. That, I'm seeking protection, that's refuge. I'm seeking shelter, protection, refuge. And who am I seeking protection in? The Buddha Dharma and the supreme assembly called the Sangha. Until I become a Buddha, I still suffer. So who's really going to protect me? And when you think about where you go. And I just want to ask you for a moment. Let me see if I can see. I've lost my gallery view here. Okay, because we have the screen sharing, that's fine. I just want to ask people for a minute if when you have a problem, so when you get into trouble, and let me just sorry, let's let go of the screen sharing for a minute so I can see people. And thank you so much. When you have a problem, what do you do to sort your problem out when a situation arises in your life? Anybody? What kind of things do you reach for? What kind of people do you reach for? What do you do? Brian?
Someone you trust.
Somebody you trust to talk to? We talk to somebody we trust, family and friends, some close, somebody like that. So, and when they advise us, okay, do they know, capital K, know what the best thing for you to do is? What do you think?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, depending on who you ask.
Okay. Yep. So they sometimes give you good advice. Are they enlightened, the people that you ask?
My mom is.
Your mom is?
My mom is, I call her the biggest bodhisattva ever.
Great.
She's like, to me, she's a walking Buddha. She's
Okay, well,
selfless.
that's nice. That's
Yeah.
lovely. That's great. We're really blessed when we have somebody like that in our lives, right?
Yeah.
So that's great. That would be a valid person to seek, somebody who's got a lot of wisdom. Fantastic. How about the rest of the people? Somebody shook their head. Sarah, you were like, no, they're not enlightened. Okay. Okay. So maybe if you're not on, can you mute your mic until you speak? Because we're getting some background noise. Thank you. So
I didn't know I shook my head. I didn't know I shook my head. But to answer your question, probably I would be agitated because there's a problem, and I would go meditate to calm down first.
Okay, that's a really good tactic, is to meditate. Again, so that's choosing refuge in the Dharma. Okay, so there's a valid help, a valid shelter from more suffering. Meditation does keep you from more suffering. A wise counsel keeps you from more suffering. They have more knowledge than you. They can advise, absolutely, right? But some of the people, Mary Jo, you got your hand raised. Mary Jo, what would you like to add?
Oh, yes, I would just like to add, well, I would probably ask my neighbor, but on some level, I just start kind of like running. And I know that's not dharmic at all, but it is what happens.
When you have a problem, you go out for a run, do you mean?
No, I mean
racing around.
Racing around. Yes.
Racing around, yeah. Yeah,
but my neighbor often, though, could help me in certain things. Depends on what is the problem.
Great. So the other thing is, look at what we do. We busy ourselves up. We can't deal with the problem. So we busy ourselves up. We turn on the television. We grab our phone and start surfing through social media. We go to the refrigerator and we eat, right? This is all the things we take refuge in: music and, escapism, all those things. So what happens is they don't really help you with the problem. With this prayer, we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. Ultimately, what you'd like to do in your Dharma career is explore the qualities of the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, so that then they become a deeper refuge for you. And you start realizing, wow, they really, the Buddha, for one thing, is free of all fear. So imagine if somebody's fearless, like innately fearless. That's pretty cool. That's something I'd be interested in. Well, how come you don't have any fears? That's interesting. What do you know that you're not afraid of anything? So you slowly learn their qualities, and then it deepens your refuge. And then the second part of the prayer, and if we can just go back to the screen share. Thank you, Heather, our wonderful host. Doing a great job. Wonderful. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma. So that's a version we say before teaching. But if we're doing this prayer just on our own, once you've taken refuge, you often recite this 3 times in the morning, 3 times at night. That's like a little commitment you can do once you've taken refuge in Dharma and gone through a refuge ceremony. You would then say, by the practice, the merits I create by practicing generosity, because that's what keeps a flow of Dharma in your life. But before teaching, you say, by the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, Chiningi Pe, okay, instead of Chinsogi Pe. So slightly different there. May I become a Buddha. And the main reason why, to benefit all living beings. That's the crux, the basis of the Mahayana tradition, to benefit all living beings, all sentient. Sentient means they have a mind or a consciousness. So this prayer kind of takes you through everything that we want to do on this path. So we're going to recite it once in English, and we're going to chant it in the phonetics a couple of times, so you get a sense of how that goes. Feel free if you'd like to join in. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By the merits I create through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all sentient beings. O Sangye Chodren Kicho Namla Janchu Bardu Dagni Kyab Suchi Dagi Jin Ningi Peso Namgi Drola Pencher Sangye Drupar Shok Sangye Chodren Kicho Namla Janchu Bardu Dagni Kyab Suchi Dagi Jin Ningi Peso Namgi Drola Pencher Sangye Drupar Parsho. Thank you. So when we do recite prayers, what's helpful is think about the meaning of what you're saying. That refuge prayer is often done before teachings, and we just blah, blah, blah our way through the prayers without much sense of what we're saying. So be cautious as you develop your own practice, that if you're doing some prayers every day and in a certain practice, that you're focusing and you're present with the meaning when you're reciting them. It's really helpful. Okay, so let's talk about what we're going to do in the next 8 hours. We have 8 hours for this class, a couple hours tonight, and we've got 4 hours tomorrow and a couple hours on Sunday. And this is the Death and Rebirth course of Discovering Buddhism. So it's a teeny bit rushed for it, but it's okay. We can certainly get through the material. I tend to like to do more meditation as well, but the meditations accompany this class. All of the materials are downloadable for you. There's readings and things like that. And I think Heather, is everyone aware of that? If you want to do the full Discovering Buddhism module of Death and Rebirth, are those materials available to everybody?
All of those materials are available on the link that all of you used to get into this.
Great. So as long as all of you know that, and I may be leading a meditation that's slightly different, a version of what's being led, sometimes I have my own versions of that, which is fine. And, but it's very nice that they do have meditations to go along. You can, if you want to meditate, you can have your tablet or your computer near your meditation space if you don't want to print out paper. And this is meaning on your own. And this way you're able to, you read a couple sentences, reflect more deeply on that, read the next couple of sentences. And that's how we really learn how to meditate. So it is something you can absolutely do on your own. And you can also listen to the recordings of this when I lead a meditation and things like that. So we're going to go through the traditional outlay of how we think about death in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition. So we're going to talk about advantages and disadvantages to thinking about death, not thinking about death. We're going to go through the 9-point death meditation. So there's different ways we can meditate on death. The simplest one is what we did this evening. And I will have little homework assignments for you in between sessions if you can get to those, and if you really want to do the full course where you do all the readings, you do the meditations, you will get so much more out of this. And a lot of people repeat these courses over and over because each time you seem to get a different layer, you know, and the way the teachings were traditionally taught in Tibet was the teacher first gave a teaching, right? They would read from their text and they would just read and then they give some commentary. And at the end of the teaching, they'd have a summary, a briefer summary of what they just taught. At the beginning of the next session, they would have a brief review because it's usually the third time that the material goes in. The first time we're kind of swimming around, it's, you know, new, we're spaced out, we're thinking of something else. And it's also tricky on Zoom because some people are doing other things while they're trying to listen to the class and things like that. So it is really helpful if you are participating in the class to really, you know, to try to be as present as possible. I greatly appreciate that. So we're going to go through that. And the easiest way to meditate on death is to think this could be my last day. So tomorrow morning, make a note to yourself, and you might need to put a note next to your bed, make a note on the bathroom mirror, whatever it is that will remind you early in the morning. I do this when I wake up. I really have, this is my last day, not this could be my last day. This is it. 6 o'clock tonight, it's over. Okay. Now, fortunately, it wasn't over for me at 6 o'clock tonight, my time. Okay. But I really try to remember that in the morning to invigorate my day. This is not a morbid sense that we use it for. It is to motivate practice. So it invigorates me. If this is my last day, how would I like to be on my last day? That's what it really says to me. It's not what do I want to do on my last day, because people say, well, I'm not going to work. My last day. Okay. It's really an attitude. How would I like to be on my last day? Okay. And we'd like to be happy, peaceful, spacious. Absolutely. Like that. So very, very helpful. So I would ask you to do that tomorrow morning. The easiest way to do is death meditation. We will also go through the 9-point death meditation. We're also going to talk about how you get out of this life, how you get into an in-between state and into the next life, what happens with the subtle body, most subtle mind, and how they exist on 3 different levels, the body and mind. And then we're also going to go into more practical applications regarding getting your paperwork ready, getting health directives ready. Have you thought about who will take care of you, how you would like, where you'd like to die, and who's going to manifest that, and things like that? How prepared are you with paperwork? So we're going to talk about all that, and then support for caregivers as well. If you're taking care of somebody, and just all those little workings that go on around death, including euthanasia, organ donation, taking care of pets, life support. We're going to go into all that. Most of that will happen on Sunday, like that. Okay. I want to talk about just traditionally right now, the disadvantages of not remembering death, and I would say at all time, and the advantages of remembering death. Now, we come from a society, and especially pre-1970, I'm going to say, it was a little bit taboo to talk about death. It was seen as morbid. It was really one of those topics that's off limits, like politics and religion, when you're in groups of people. And people would see it as bringing the mind down. It's a very unpleasant subject. Okay, that changed a lot around 1965 with Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. And she was kind of at the forefront of what I'd call the death and dying movement, and published a book, I think, called On Death and Dying. I remember reading it a long time ago, that was all of a sudden about, we can talk about this subject. And it was critical that happened because everybody dies. So not to face this and talk about it, I do reflect on a moment around, I think 1971 for me. We went to visit my great aunt, and it was my mother's aunt, and my mother took my family to see her because she was dying of liver cancer. And we really literally were going to say goodbye to her. And I was told, you know, she was dying of cancer. This is the last time you'll see her. You know, my mom was open about that. And no problem, you know, and it was sad. And, you know, and I was maybe, I don't know how old I was, but coming into consequence in my mind of what death was. I had lost some pets. So I knew there was a loss, but I was old enough to understand, you know, this was a somber moment. And then when we got to the house, her daughter was there, and her daughter was a grown, you know, an adult. And her daughter quietly said to us before we were in her room, leaned into us to say, we're not telling her. Like, so as if my aunt didn't know she was dying, they kind of covered the whole thing up for her. Like whatever the doctor said, they didn't say it to her directly, that she had liver cancer. There was nothing they could do. They told her daughter, and her daughter said, we're not telling her that she's dying. So this is how it was in the 70s and before. It was absurd, as if she didn't know she was dying, right? So we went through this little charade. We spent, you know, a couple hours with her around her bed, actually, in this little charade of, we were just visiting. And at the end, we were all like, well, okay, we'll see you next time, like that. And we walked out, and I just remember, I just didn't really get it. You know, I said to my mom on the way home about why can't we talk to her about it? You know, because it's sad, my mother said. You know, it's an uncomfortable subject. Okay, well, life in samsara is uncomfortable. So the beginning here is, let's think about advantages and disadvantages. Okay, if you don't think about death, and what I actually like to do is in the morning, I do have this motivation in my mind, this thought, this is my last day. But what happens is, if you're able to bring it up through the day, seriously, you don't know when you're going to die. So let's say you're having a disagreement with your partner or a friend. You're having a little trouble with somebody on the phone. If you have a spark in your mind and suddenly you think, what if I was actively dying? I wouldn't be worried about this. I would just be kind to them and let go. And so the more you can bring it up, you're in traffic with someone, you're in the grocery store. Somebody is, you know, took the last item that you wanted, or they're racing for the line to get in front of you, or there's some issue with an item and you take it back to the sales counter, you know, or something to do something. And they're talking on their phone, they're texting on their phone while you're standing waiting at the window. We have all these little situations all day long, right? Think if you bring in death there, it adds a lot of space. It kind of takes all the antagonism out of stuff between people. You know, all that kind of stuff of you're ready to have a little tussle with someone. And then you think, what if I was dying now? How upset would I be about this? How worried would I be about it? Would any of this stuff matter? Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that you don't participate. You do need to participate in a practical way with your life. You can't just throw, well, I'm going to die at some point. It doesn't matter. No point getting out of bed. No, you have to participate. Okay. But when you find your mind doing somersaults around something at some point, you know, it's kind of saying, so if I were dying right now, how important would this be? Can I let this go right now? You know, and again, you can gauge yourself. Is it something you can let go? Or do I need to just at least say this sentence, this person, and then I'll let it go, like that? So death really adds a different flavor the more we can think about it. This is what happens if you never think about it. And there are people I know that it's morbid, I don't want to talk about it. Okay, there's 6 reasons under the disadvantages, not thinking about death, and there's 6 advantages to thinking about death. Disadvantages, you won't remember the Dharma. Number 2, even though you remember the Dharma, you will postpone your practice. Number 3, you may try to practice, but your practice won't be very pure. It won't be very rich and consistent. Number 4 is you will lose determination to practice Dharma and will eventually drop it altogether if you don't think about death. Okay. And just think about those 4 right then. You know, we kind of, and I know so many people like this, like I'm going to get my practice started. I'm going to get to that book. I'm going to read that book on emptiness I wanted to read. I'm going to learn the 9-point death meditation. I'm going to start doing some study and meditation on the Lam Rim. I'm going to do it, but I'm kind of busy right now. So maybe next week, next month, next year, suddenly it's not that important. And then suddenly death comes. And I will tell you honestly, we think it's out there, death. When you're healthy, if you're relatively healthy, I had a friend that was given a lot of practice from Lama Zopa Rinpoche a long time ago. It was a lot of practice. And usually if that happens, it's for a good reason. Rinpoche must have seen that she was going to have some serious illness. So she never got started. It was always another excuse. And then she got ovarian cancer. And it was awful. And she died from it. It was really awful. So, and we had a group of caretaking her through this. And one time I would come over, she was lying on her couch. What happens when you get cancer as a byproduct of cancer, as some of you may know, is fatigue. You're tired a lot. You don't have energy. You may be in a lot of pain, okay? Which was the case with her. And at one point, lying on the couch, because she couldn't really do her practice anymore, she was too tired, I would sit on the floor. I would come once or twice a week, and I would do these practices that she was supposed to do and just chant it out loud for her and listen. And she would just lie and when all of a sudden she turned in the middle, she interrupted me. And she said something about, I should have done the practice. I should have gotten started. You know, the instructions Rinpoche gave her. But so you don't want to wait till then, till it's too late like that. Why not just get started now? And the other thing is the hardest part is getting started. But when you start, you feel better. Immediately you feel better. You feel like, wow, I did it. I set up my little altar. I have a place I'm going to sit now. I got that book now. I'm reading that book that I wanted to read. It feels empowering. There's no question. So those are those first 4. You're going to, get to Dharma. You're going to do your practice. You're not going to put it off. You're going to have a rich, consistent practice. Number 5 are the disadvantages. You'll continue creating negative actions, okay, and become unsuitable to get free, to reach nirvana. A lot of times that happens when we're not thinking about death. And the 6th one, at the time of death, you may have a lot of regrets at having wasted this precious opportunity like that. 6 disadvantages for not remembering death at all times. Here are the 6 advantages. 6 advantages. And sorry, do we go for 2 hours tonight? Is that right? Each session's 2 hours, right? Okay, great. Advantages of remembering death. And not, obviously they're kind of the opposite of what I just mentioned, but the way they lay it out here is your Dharma practice. Number 1, your Dharma practice becomes very pure. Number 2, your Dharma actions become powerful and effective. 3, 4, and 5 kind of go together, and it'll say it's beneficial to remember death in the beginning of one's Dharma practice, in the middle of one's Dharma practice, and at the end of one's Dharma practice. And I would even think of it as in the beginning of life, in the middle of life, and at the end of life. Same. In the beginning of life, and even if you're 20s, 30s, the beginning of your Dharma practice, and it doesn't matter how old you are, right? Really helpful to think that death is coming soon, because it keeps me actively pursuing that practice, to get going on the practice. It doesn't matter how old to get started. In the middle of the practice, sometimes things plateau and your practice gets a bit dry and you need some livening up. So great to continue to reflect on death, because then you go, that's right, I need to keep going. And you can certainly change up your practice at times, change prayers around a little bit, change in order. I just change something this year that I was doing, and I change and order something, and it's nice, you know, it's kind of livened things up for me a little bit than the same things I'm doing every day. So absolutely perfect to do it and try different meditations. So in the middle of the practice, in the middle of your life, it's very important. But what a lot of people are doing in the middle of their lives are building a career, having a family, purchasing a house or property, you know, changing jobs, getting retrained, getting educated, like that. So it can be harder to practice Dharma then. But I find that if you keep a little consistency going, even during busy periods, then when you have more space and time, when you retire or your kids have left the nest or things like that, that practice is there sustainable, and now you can extend it and expand it. I do know a number of parents that did that in the Dharma, where they had kids and then they weren't really available to do retreats and to do different things like that, to go to India if they wanted to on a certain pilgrimage. They didn't have the time, but now the kids are grown and out, and they're quite free like that. And the Dharma practice has sustained them. They kept it going at a bit of a lesser level like that. At the end of your practice, at the end of your life, that's the only thing that really will sustain you, is the Dharma practice. We're going to talk more about that as well. And then the last one here is in the hour of death, at the time that you're going to be dying, you have a more satisfied mind that you've lived your life meaningfully. Less regrets, no regrets. That you tried your best to live your life as meaningfully as possible. Like that. And here is just to reflect for a moment, this Indian poem. This is from the extended Lamrim outlines. Just close your eyes for a moment. I just want to read this to you. Just reflect, this day is a special day. It is yours. Yesterday slipped away. It cannot be filled with more meaning. About tomorrow, nothing is known. But this day, today, is yours. Make use of it. Today, you can make someone happy. Today, you can help another. This day is a special day. It is yours. So please relax. So I want to talk about the 8 worldly concerns and how they manipulate us. The 8 worldly concerns. Some of you are familiar, and sometimes they're called the 8 worldly dharmas, the 8 mundane concerns, like that, okay? And there are 4 pairs of situations that tend to be heavily operational in most of our life, okay? The 4 pairs, and I'll give them to you in abbreviated form first. Pain and pleasure, gain and loss, praise and blame, and fame and dishonor. So once again, pain and pleasure, or pleasure and pain. Number 2, the number 2 pair, gain and loss. Number 3 is praise and blame. And number 4 is fame and dishonor. So the way they were really explained literally in Tibetan was being happy when you feel pleasure, being unhappy when you experience pain. That's pleasure and pain. Gain and loss is being happy when you get something, win something, gain something, receive something. Being unhappy when you lose something or don't get something. The 3rd pair is being happy when you hear pleasant sounds about you. Praise. and being unhappy when you hear negative sounds about you. That's how it was literally rolled out. When you hear negative things about you, negative words about you, that's blame. And the last pair is being happy when you have a good reputation, being unhappy when you have a bad reputation. Okay. And it's often, you can also look at, if you want to look at these 8 situations as craving for pleasures of the 6 senses. That's pleasure. Again, craving for pleasures of the 6 senses. And just think how your senses go out to draw in, you know, the eyes see something, I want that. You know, you taste something, I need more of that. You hear a not pleasant sound, I want that. Constantly we're manipulated by the sense faculties. Craving to be free of the unpleasant, whatever it is. Okay. Craving to hear sweet, ego-pleasing words or sounds. Craving to not hear ugly, displeasing words or sounds. Craving to acquire material things, gain. Craving to avoid losing or not obtaining material things. Okay. Craving for personal praise and admiration. Craving to avoid personal slander, blame, criticism. So you get the idea. These 8 worldly concerns, 8 worldly dharmas, okay? So this really interferes with our life and keeps us away from reflecting on death. So I want you to just reflect this weekend. Are you under their effect? Are you under their influence or not? When are you under the influence? What's it like? Is it a problem for you or not a problem? But here are disadvantages when we become preoccupied. This is what happens when we become preoccupied with the 8 mundane concerns, these 8 worldly dharmas, okay? Life is always full of ups and downs, okay? But we don't have the balance. We're constantly chasing after something. We get it, we're all excited. We lose it, we plunge like that. So you're constantly on a roller coaster like that. You can often take a lower rebirth in future lives, just constantly going from one scene to another, hating this, loving this, wanting more of this, grasping onto that, averting from that. Just the mind never peaceful, okay? And what it does is it just perpetuates. And that's what animals do. A lot of animals are just chasing after things like that. So we're kind of courting these lower realms in a sense. Future lives, you create a habit where future lives are spent with uncontrolled attachments. Uncontrolled attachments. Think of the seeds you're planting based on those attachments, based on those 8 worldly dharmas. Another thing is it's really hard to get onto a Mahayana path with these 8 worldly dharmas. Really hard to reach liberation, nirvana, when you're chasing these 8 worldly dharmas, right? And you'll constantly have hindrances in your meditation practice. You know, do you ever notice you sit and, you know, and the one thing I really tell people is get the phone out of the room. It's not enough just to turn it off or to turn it down, to turn the sounds off. It's an inviting thing for a lot of people. I know a lot of people have asked me recently about how to deal with their addiction to their technology, their phone, their tablet. So certain social media sites like that. So I just like put those in another room so it's not an enticement because I just need to check the price of the thing I was going to, oh, I forgot to order that other thing. Let me just do that now for a minute. And there goes 20 minutes of your meditation practice like that. Even if you're in the practice on your own without any technology like that, just notice how the mind is bouncing around. You know, I had a little funny phone call with somebody yesterday and I wonder if they think that I'm this and I did that. I think they misunderstood me and that wastes, there goes another 15 minutes of your practice, right? So again, if we're doing the best we can, trying to communicate as clearly as we can with people, when we mess up, and we will mess up because we're humans, so also acknowledging that we're humans, that means we make mistakes. We don't intend to a lot of times, but we just do. because we're humans. That's the nature of being a human. Okay. So just because of that, can I, number one, be more forgiving of myself and others because we're human? Okay. And then because I do make a mistake in a communication with someone, I don't need to obsess about it. But I realize that tomorrow when I speak to them, or I'll make a special note to call them to apologize. So I don't need it to filter into my meditation practice. I can let it go. But the 8 worldly dharmas doesn't want you to do that, because we've got that one of good reputation or bad reputation, or blame, and they may be blaming me and thinking bad things about me, and now I'm obsessing about that. Busy mind, busy mind. Okay. So the practice, you end up with a practice that's only service to the 8 worldly dharmas, right? Just you're a slave to the 8 worldly dharmas constantly. And often those 8 situations cause a lot of anger in our mind, and anger destroys your merits. So these are some disadvantages when you notice you're grasping and you say somehow it might be your birthday or some occasion and somebody doesn't arrive with the right gift, or why did they give you that? Or how come they gave her that and they gave me this? There's gain and loss for you. Or you lose something, you know, your phone breaks or whatever's going on. How far does it spin you out? Or is it just kind of like, hey, things break. That's their nature, is to break. So things are going to break. You do what you need to do to sort it. Is it going to ruin your day? Because I know it does ruin some people's day. I've seen people, huge drama, huge hysteria from something relatively minor. Okay, those are a lot of disadvantages when you want to look at how the 8 worldly dharmas manipulate your mind. So let's think about antidotes. Can I apply some antidotes right now so my mind will be more peaceful, so I can generate more meaning in life, develop better meaning in life, so that I'm prepared for death, like that. So let's think about some antidotes. Think about, if you follow the 8 worldly concerns, as I said before, you're really no better than an animal. It's like an animal existence. An animal existence is considered the lower realm, the top of the lower realm. For those of you that aren't familiar, we have 6 realms of sentient, you cycle in samsara. 6 realms, sentient beings, okay? 3 lower realms and 3 upper realms. Humans are the bottom of the upper realms. We got a good rebirth. And the human rebirth is said to be optimum for getting enlightened, because we have a balance of suffering and leisure. Suffering motivates us to practice. The leisure affords us the space to practice. Also in the upper realms are 2 God realms that actually are higher than the human realm. And the reason they're higher is you experience more pleasure in the God realms. But the lower God realm are jealous gods that are always competing and fighting with the hedonistic gods. That's the top of samsara on that level. But the problem in the God realms is you use up so much merit because of all the wonderful things you have. And the hedonistic gods the most merit because they're just living in this entirely pleasurable realm, okay? But you're not enlightened, even though it's entirely pleasurable. You're not enlightened. And what you're doing is you're still in samsara. You use up all your merit that got you into this intensely pleasurable place, and you end up most probably taking a lower rebirth after that lifetime. You don't have any incentive in the God realms to practice Dharma, to make imprints of Dharma in your most subtle consciousness. So it's not really very helpful. The human realm, we can practice Dharma like that. Even one of the lower realms, the Preta realm, a hungry ghost realm, which is below animals, they can hear Dharma teachings. So it's one advantage they do have in an entirely suffering realm, okay? So anyway, the lower realms are the animal realm is top, Preta realm is next, which are called hungry ghosts, okay? Hungry ghosts, this is according to Tibetan Buddhism, hungry ghosts or grasping spirits are what got them into that realm is intense grasping, craving, desire, like that, never being satisfied. And it's a realm that is tortured with hunger and thirst, They never have the karma. Like if you show them a glass of water, their karmic projection onto that water, what they see instead of clear water to drink, because they don't have the karma to have a quenched thirst, they see a glass filled with pus and blood, like that. That's the experience of, they will come to a river in order to drink, like we would see a river, like that. When they get to the river, they may see it in the distance, and when they get to the river, it's a dry riverbed. No karma to actually see the water there. That's the Preta realm. Okay. And then the hell realm is the lowest. We do have hell realms in Buddhism. This is where I lose all the Catholics. Okay, but we do have hell realms. However, different than Catholicism, our hell realms are varied. We have intensely hot hells. We have intensely cold hells. We have a whole variety, anything to fit any fancy you can imagine. But you understand the hell realms would be immense suffering that's created by the worst hell realms, by sadistic killing, and then various negativities that we do in our mindset like that. So again, you think about your attitude. You know, we want to be kind to people. We want to help people. The more you have those thoughts, and the more you can really motivate your Dharma practice and have great strides in it, I think we'll just keep improving the seeds in our consciousness each time round. And those seeds eventually will get us to Buddhahood, like that. Okay, so not trying to freak you out, just to explain the different realms. So when you think of the animal realm, when I said the 8 worldly dharmas, if you're chasing them, is no better than the animal realm. We think of our pets, and the domestic pets we have are at the peak of the animal realm. I mean, the very top of the animal realm would be service animals, like that. Most intelligent animals that are serving beings. And our pets have a really good scene. You know, they're laying in the sun all day. They really don't have anything to do. They're fed, they're well tended, protected. But that's the tip of the iceberg of the animal realm, our pets. And even if you look and you really check out your dog or cat, they're not in control of their lives. They don't control necessarily when they eat. They have intense fear of things that they don't understand. They're kind of, even though they may be intelligent to some degree, they really have a lot of ignorance. And I never see, you know, animals don't come to Dharma teachings, right? They can't read Dharma books like that. I mean, occasionally you have a cat wander into the Gompa, the meditation hall at a center, like that. But they don't, so we really have to explore the animal realm if you want to see. And we become like that, chasing the 8 worldly dharmas. Okay. Other antidotes. So you can think, I don't want to be just like an animal, you know. And you see, sometimes we had dogs. I grew up with a couple of dogs, and they were really food motivated. So as soon as we put the food down once a day, they just gobbled it right down, just eating with intense grasping. So do we want to be like that? And animals in the wild are constantly hunting and just eating all day, things like that. Okay. Other antidotes about the 8 worldly dharmas: the object we see, think about it, is a projection of our deluded mind, the object we're experiencing. Let's say you have grasping of gain and loss, you want that thing. And you look at it and you say, it's just projecting onto that right now, that I need that thing. And sometimes we want to buy another pair of shoes, another pair of athletic shoes, another fleece vest, another, you already have one. So again, commercial advertising, the way the stores get you, if it's on sale, then you have even more of a draw to it. But it's really just a projection of my deluded mind. And also, if you're having trouble with someone and you're worried about praise and blame, or good reputation, bad reputation, and I can just think, well, they think this about me and they're having that. And then I'll just think, that's just my delusions kind of operating. People aren't always thinking about you like that. Often they're not. They're too busy thinking about themselves, right? Okay. You can also change an object you're attracted to into an object you're not attached to at all, like that. So, and this is something, I don't know, I see this really clearly with cars. I have owned a few cars. I own a car now. I need a car where I live. And I've never had a new car. I don't have no interest in having a new car because I see people with their new cars and they want to park far away from here because somebody, and then they get their first little nick and somebody opened the door in the parking lot into their car and they get all upset. And it's like, that's the nature of the car. And somehow when I see the car and even the used car that I bought, I could kind of see it in the scrap heap eventually is where it will end up. All cars end up there eventually. So, you know, you can kind of break the car down in your mind. And now it's all shiny and new and it's great. And hopefully the next car you get is better than this car. And, you know, that's certainly nice. The car I got did certain things my old car didn't do. I was so excited to have interior adjustable side mirrors. That was a major step up for me with this car because so many times I do a lot of commuting in the car to teach Dharma before the pandemic. And I'd be driving on a major road trip to the next center and it would be pouring rain. And I realized I didn't adjust the outside mirrors or something and I couldn't see the things you had to be adjusted from the outside and you couldn't ever do the passenger one because you'd have to run around and do it. And you get back in the driver's seat and go, it's not quite in yet. It's not in far enough, right? These are the little things you go through with an old car. So again, just changing it, you know, when you think about the car in the scrap heap and you know that in 5 or 10 years, you're going to be tired of the car and the car is going to be not functioning that well. And it's going to need this and it's going to be unreliable. Can you kind of visualize that when you're buying the car and think like, okay, do I really need the flashy hot one that's $2,000 more? And I'll be happy with this one. Good enough. Here's another antidote. There's nothing new in samsara. There's nothing new in samsara. I mean, things come up, but samsara is the same old cycle. Samsara, again, Sanskrit word for to cycle, to turn. We're turning through birth, old age, sickness, and death, turning through that. So there's nothing really new here that you think this is some new thing that suddenly you need like that. And here's another thing, another antidote will not bring true happiness. If I obtain this thing, it's actually in the nature of suffering. It's actually in the nature of suffering. We don't see it that way. Your shiny new car, your new running shoes, whatever your thing is, your new phone, your new computer, right? If it is a source of true happiness, this is the way a true source of happiness works. The more you have it, the happier you will be. The more you have of it, the happier you will be. Okay, so you have your lovely computer. So more of them would make you happier. Now you have 100 computers. You're any happier? No, it's ridiculous to have 100 computers. But what if you take something like chocolate too, ice cream, pizza, things like that, you know, and if you're a chocoholic and somebody brings you a box of chocolates, and I've seen this with chocoholics, I know. I often like to gift people with chocolate because people always like chocolate. And you bring it and I can see their eyes get big and suddenly, and I also can see behind it, and this is somebody I knew very well, behind it was, okay, the chocolate may have been gifted to the family or gifted to this one person in the family. They took ownership of it. The box was opened, passed around one time for everyone to take a piece. And after that, the person who took ownership put the box and hid it away. So they would be the only one to finish it and to eat the rest of the chocolate. Right? Think of the grasping of that you're not going to share anymore with people. Right? And the other thing is if chocolate was a true source of happiness for you, then the way it works, a true source of happiness, the more of it you have, the happier you are. Love is a true source of happiness. The more love you have, the happier you are. Please check in your mind. Chocolate, you know with chocolate, if you eat too much, you get sick like that. So it's something about, it's really in the nature of suffering. And that's the proof that it's in the nature of suffering, is the more of it you have, you'll eventually get sick like that. It's too much. And here's another antidote. No matter how hard one tries, it often leads to dissatisfaction. like that. This particular 8 worldly Dharma, when you think about it, will only lead to dissatisfaction. Getting that thing, avert, like thinking about the loss of that, gaining more pleasure. This is going to bring me more pleasure. This is going to do, it leads to dissatisfaction. You're going to have a party with your friends, and you're going to go to the beach, and you're going to do that. And now the pandemic's ending, and you're going to travel here, and and eventually each thing you do, it never really lives up to the expectation often. There's often, if you have an expectation, it usually doesn't fulfill. And just one of the nature of samsara is dissatisfaction. It's one of the ways we suffer, one of our sufferings like that. Okay. And then here's to think about, if it is impermanent by nature, if it's impermanent by nature, there's no way it lasts. Everything's impermanent. Okay, everything changes. Everything's changing. It's a changing phenomena like that when we think about it. Everything's changing. And that's just the nature of samsara as well. We love to have things not change. Love to have that ability not, and when things change, people get very rattled. And I just met somebody the other day, a couple days ago. We were dialoguing about something spiritual. I forget what it was, but we both, and I was saying to them, I may have a big transition this year, maybe moving. And I'm quite excited about it. Even though right now I'm buried under the 65-year house. We've had this house for 65 years and I don't even know at this point where to go with the clean out. I'm in the midst of it, and I'm just like, so I just keep slowly taking a deep breath and moving forward. But I'm excited about change. And they said, this is exciting change. And I said, yeah, it's amazing how many people resist. So it's something you can certainly look at in your own life. And the other thing with the 8 worldly dharmas is when you explore emptiness, that subdues all of them, when you explore emptiness. And we can talk about that as well more if that's of interest in the dying process, the death process. So you can think, if I care so much about momentary sufferings and sicknesses, why don't I care about the tremendous continuous sufferings of my future lives? What am I doing to prepare for those future lives right now? But what we're consumed with right now is this life, all the drama of this life, okay? Why don't I worry more, concern myself more with trying to eliminate the true cause of suffering? The true cause of suffering. Karma and delusion is the true cause of suffering. So slowly, something we can think about, what are you doing to invest right now in your future lives? What kind of imprints are you making? Because right now you got here already. You're good right now. This life is taken care of. You met the Dharma. Okay, you're here. You don't have to worry about this life so much. Okay, but think about all the energy we put into it. Okay, now if you believe in reincarnation, which is something Buddhism teaches, past lives, future lives, and we can talk more about that as well. If you believe in reincarnation, you've had countless past lives, is what reincarnation says, because there's no beginning to your consciousness or your mind. This is what Tibetan Buddhism says. How is that so? Well, because every present moment of consciousness, every moment of mind, Tibetan Buddhism says, has a moment before that causes it. So there's a cause and effect relationship for every moment of our consciousness, for every thought, feeling, memory, experience like that. There will always be a preceding moment that caused it. Things do not arise randomly in Tibetan Buddhism. There's a cause and effect relationship. Okay, so if you want to go back and say, well, my conception, that was the beginning of me. Okay, that was the beginning of your body. Absolutely. Okay, body's physical, sperm and egg come together, they're physical, cells replicate. That's the beginning of your body in this life. Absolutely. Okay, the mind is non-physical. The mind is not the body. According to Tibetan Buddhism, it's not the brain. Brain is a physical organ. Okay, The mind is consciousness. Its two characteristics, it's clear and knowing. That's consciousness. It's clear and knowing. You may say right now, my mind's not very clear, okay? The real nature of your mind is clarity. Why does it not appear to you as being clear? Simply from the nature of a habit of delusion in your mind, that's all. I'm not saying you're bad and I'm not laying a trip on you. I'm just saying that we all suffer from those experiences that busy up, clutter the mind. But its real nature, if you can peel that away through meditation, getting to know the various levels of your delusion and how they operate and what triggers them, we can eventually clear them out, returning you to that awareness of the clarity, like that. So that's the mind, okay? This cause and effect relationship occurring, okay? And so as a result of that, when you, and I'll explain a little bit more in future sessions as well, at the moment of conception and the mind existing on a gross level, a subtle level, and a most subtle level, and the mind exists on those levels as well. And I will go into more on this. But as a result, the mind has a unique experience in its most subtle experience of being able to attach to the most subtle body, which is like a life force energy, a wind energy. The wind is physical in nature. Wind is physical in nature. And so in the Tibetan system, we call it lung, wind, lung. But in the Chinese system, they call it qi, like a life force. Hindu Ayurvedic system, they might call it prana. Okay. That's physical in nature, and that's the basis of your body. That's what allows the replication of the cells to happen, that wind energy. Okay, but it's that most subtle wind. The most subtle mind is mounted upon like a rider on a horse. Okay, but it's the most subtle mind with all those seeds in that consciousness, not physical in nature. So how do we experience it? I can't say. I've asked many Tibetan lamas that. How does it actually mount the most subtle wind? I've never gotten a satisfactory answer like that. It's just kind of Tibetans sometimes have this, they subsume like it's just how it is. You know, the highly realized mind knows it, teachings that came from the Buddha. Okay. So what happens is in the most subtle mind, there's seeds planted from all the karmic activities you've done in the past with your body, speech, and mind, has planted seeds in your consciousness. It's doing it right now. Those seeds are in that subtle consciousness, subtle mind, most subtle mind. That's the thing that reincarnates, that goes on, that goes from life to life, body to body, form to form, like that. So those seeds, as the most subtle mind mounts, the most subtle wind is mounted there, already connected, traversing through this next life. When the cells start to replicate, it's the seeds in that consciousness that inform how that body is going to form, how that life is going to be, all based on what's in the most subtle consciousness, those seeds, like that. So what seeds are we planting now to take care of the future lives? That's what's most critical right now. And sometimes there's a famous saying in Tibetan Buddhism. A lot of people say to me, you know, is it appropriate to ask about what I was in my past life? And have you ever asked a Lama about your past lives? And I'm not really worried about my past lives. They're done. I can't do anything about them. You certainly can get some messages of trends from your past lives, maybe things you have not worked out in past lives, that this is your dance to do right now. This is the dance to work it out. This is the chance we get. We've met the Dharma. We have every perfect opportunity right now. Okay. So what happens is, I'm not that interested in the past lives, right? And so what they'll say is, if you want to know what your past life was, look at your body now. Look at the body you got now in this life. And if you want to know what your future life is going to be, look at your mind now. 8 worldly dharmas. So what I'd like you to do, another homework assignment. This evening, till we meet tomorrow is of those 8 worldly dharmas, and if you already know the answer to this, please do not say, okay? I'd like you to work out which is the worst of the 8, which is the one that keeps you up at night, if it's in operation, which is the one that has you here. You know, one of them is in operation, which one and why? So have a look at those and see if you can come up with the worst one. And don't forget your waking meditation on death. I'm just making a few notes. Okay. Let's talk about impermanence. And let me just ask, first off, if there right now at this point, are there any questions so far? Anything I'm talking about? Okay, everybody okay? Okay. Let me talk about impermanence. There's certain words that are used sometimes a little more specifically in Tibetan, and they don't so much use the words impermanence and permanent. They use changing and unchanging. There's a changing phenomenon and there's unchanging phenomenon. When we think of permanent, you know, we think of something that goes on forever, like that. So it's very different than having an unchanging phenomenon like that. Doesn't necessarily mean it goes on forever. We have this idea, we also have a word called eternal. Is it eternal? Like that. And that creates this sense of, excuse me, the mind. So they'll say, does the mind go on, and is the mind permanent? Okay. And we don't really have that idea in Tibetan Buddhism because the mind's always changing. It's a changing phenomenon, the mind. And you just look at your own mind right now, the thoughts going through, the emotions, the feelings, and one other thing I was going to say about past lives that I find helps people to gain a little bit of control over drama in this life, if they happen to have a lot of drama in their lives. And some people are more drama kings and queens than others, okay? Some people don't court a lot of drama in their lives, but some do. So if you find you have a lot of drama or you're around somebody that is like that, and it's nice to kind of bring it down a few levels to think about, and let's just go back to our last life. Think of all the intricacies in this life, the people you know, the very close relationships you've had, the different intertwinings of relationships, people that are incredibly dear to you and people that were dear to you, you know, 20, 30, 40 years ago, depending on your age, that you have no idea what they're doing now. You don't even know where they live or if they're dead or alive or things like that. So we just have that in one life, okay? But think of the last life. If you believe in reincarnation, there was a life before this one. How many of you remember anything about it? Right? Most people don't. Most people don't remember their past lives. And that's why people say they don't exist. They don't exist because I don't remember them. Do you remember being inside your mother when she was pregnant with you? Did that not happen? That was one way I chipped away to get at reincarnation because I didn't believe in reincarnation initially. I wasn't sure, put it that way. I wasn't sure. Excuse me. So it's something to think about. Like we say, I don't remember, didn't happen. I don't remember being inside my mother. That happened. I have proof. I've seen photos and things like that. Pretty clear proof from the people in my family. So, but let's think about this past life we've had. Just go to the one right before this one that we don't remember. Okay. Don't you think there was as much drama in that life? Mothers and fathers and siblings and kids and pets and friends and schooling, and if we were human, and places we've lived and things we were attached to, and unbelievable intricacy, and we don't remember any of it. So for me, it really helps to deflect a lot of like how much, like I was just saying, I'm cleaning out this house that we've had for 65 years. Fortunately, not a big house, thank God, because I think I would hang myself now if it was. Sorry, not very Buddhist, but it's a lot of my parents' stuff. A lot of my parents' stuff. I'm just amazed at the stuff. And I'm amazed at, what I need to do with the stuff, like the giving it away but the thing is, there's my siblings, and one of them doesn't live near here at all. She's overseas. And so there's a little bit of an agenda of, trying to sort it with who gets what and who wants what, and then can it be sold, and is there any value in it? And I'm exhausted. It's an exhausting process because it's easy to give it away. I'm ready to just move it out the door. I'm happy to make a few trips and just easy. I could empty this house in probably a couple of hours if I really had to, but that's not the situation here. So I'm trying to do the best I can. But again, it's just stuff. And think about, so I can bring it down to a level. It doesn't matter. It's not really that important. Make sure I do my practice every day, because that's what's important for future lives. That's what's going to do it for me for future lives. The rest of this stuff, it's not really, So every time there is a big drama in your life, it's a nice way to really reduce. Okay, practically, I need to engage and get this done and move through it. And whatever problem is coming up for you, whatever situation's happening, there's certain rituals in life we do. There's certain things, taking care of children, taking care of parents, all those kinds of things. And you just do it with as much generosity of heart, kindness of mind, wonderful, like that. But it doesn't need to be over elaborated, because it's how important is it in my preparing for my death, getting ready for the next life, making sure the good imprints are there. So let's talk a little bit more about impermanence and changing and unchanging phenomena. So there's gross impermanence and subtle and most subtle impermanence as well. Gross, subtle, and most subtle, like that. So gross impermanence, gross change, we understand. You'll see somebody gets their hair cut. That's pretty obvious. Somebody changes their hair color or something like that. Somebody gets a new car. Somebody's car is in an accident. Gross impermanence. You see the change right there dynamically. Then we have more subtle, the seasons changing. The seasons changing. If I leave the East Coast of the States, something I will miss very much are the seasons. I like all 4 seasons here. I live right in the middle of them. We get an equal dose of each of the seasons. And I just watched the woods behind the house sprouting, the little light leaves in spring. Now they're coming full in. I saw the birds are having all their trips and doing all their things. And I watch it come on very slowly. It comes on. We'll go into summer, and then the fall, and the leaves will start changing, and then the trees will be bare. I've seen this cycle so many times like that. So there's a more subtle thing. And then there's most subtle changes we're not really aware of. There's most subtle changes going on in your body with cells replicating, changing. You have no sense of the blood even circulating through your body right now, but it's all in motion. Everything is in motion, pretty much. So the fact that we operate in a situation that is constantly in flux, constantly changing, tells you something fundamental, that everything changes. Everything changes. Change is really the only thing you can count on. Think about it. The only thing you can count on. It's really a constant. So here's the third thing I'd like you to think about tonight, and we'll talk about it more tomorrow as well, is how comfortable are you with change? Some people are pretty fluid. Some people, not at all. They just resist at every turn, everything. So let's do a meditation right now on change that I find really, really helpful. So just sit comfortably. You can lightly close your eyes. Just bring your mind to your breath for a moment. And I'd just like you to now focus on the gross changes going on in your body right now. I don't mean gross, disgusting. I mean the ones you can track in your body right now. So for instance, you might swallow. You might have an itch somewhere on the body. You might notice your stomach grumbling. You move your hand. Just notice these gross changes happening in the body right now. What about the more subtle changes in your body right now? Imagine those. For instance, your heart is beating. Can you actually feel that? Often not. Blood is moving through your circulatory system. There's neurological activity. Just imagine these subtle changes. There could be digestion happening. Kidneys are functioning, doing their cleansing. And just imagine all of these subtle changes happening in your body right now. What about the most subtle changes happening in your body? Just imagine cells replicating, dying away, minute particles moving around in certain configurations. Just imagine all of these changes right now going on in your body. And what about your mind? Think of the gross changes in your mind first. You have one thought, there's another thought, the emotions coming up, another memory popping in. Think of all the fluctuations in your mind, that stream of consciousness. One thought after another after another. And the more subtle changes in your mind, more subtle changes, they say, in a finger snap, just snapping the fingers. There's 64 fluctuations of your consciousness, 64 movements of your mind in a finger snap. That's very subtle. Think about those movements that we're not aware of, that we're not often aware of till we have higher realizations. And even the mind, in its most subtle experience, its clear, light nature. So just get a sense of the body and mind, its ever changing situation. And let's just step out of the body and mind for a moment. Just consider now the room in which you're sitting, the house, the apartment, the changing nature of that external reality in which you're sitting in. So while the walls, the floor, the ceiling may seem solid, we know they're made up of particles moving in a certain configuration. Atoms moving in a certain way. Think of the air molecules moving around the space. Every time you inhale, you're breathing in different atoms of oxygen. Every time you exhale, releasing different air. Nothing ever stays the same. And continue to expand out beyond the borders of your room, your house. Cars may be moving by. Trees are growing. Grass may be growing. Sand may be shifting. The air outside. People moving around. And just get a sense, internal, external, the ever-changing nature of our reality. So please relax. When you're ready, slowly open your eyes. So where I find this meditation really helpful is a lot of people resist change in general, as I was saying, causes a lot of suffering. So if that's one of the things you're noticing that causes you suffering in particular, that you're not good with change, is I would start with small changes in your life and practice with those. Meaning some small thing changes. Somebody cancels dinner plans with you at the last minute or lunch, or you get to the store and they're out of that product. How do you respond? Those are mundane, simple things like that. And then we come to bigger changes. The biggest change when we lose someone to death. Somebody dies, you get the cancer diagnosis, which I hope you don't ever, but something like that. And so if we're practiced at the small ones, doing pretty well with it. This is how samsara is. Things change. Your car doesn't start one day. Some new house repair, something breaks in the kitchen. But things like that are always happening. And how does the mind, peaceful with it, balanced, dealing, just okay. Things like that have to happen. Then we get a little bit more skilled when bigger changes arise. Bigger changes arise. So you practice with the small things. Get good at those. But the other thing that happens for people is, some of you may be pretty relaxed with this. I think we get to a phase later in life where, aging. And I know some people that have approached me about their aging, and they notice they're looking like this in the mirror, and they're, it often happens with like attractive women, attractive men, and they notice the aging thing, and there's nothing you can do about it. So why are we going to suffer through it? And I always found it kind of interesting, all the expensive creams that they sell. There's a whole industry of cosmetics to make you forget that there's this thing called aging. And the natural aging thing is your hair is going to change color. That, by the way, that's natural. That's part of nature. It's just that happens. Like for me with the spring, where the birds come and they make their nests, and some of them I see the nests and the things, and it's nature. That's just a natural thing to happen. If it didn't happen, I would be a little bit disturbed in the spring here where I live. If I didn't see that happening, something's wrong with the planet if that doesn't happen. And things are kind of wrong with the planet, so there are some changes. But when people get really disturbed because their hair is turning gray or white, I feel like we're going against nature. This is what you get: wrinkles on your face. Your skin changes, like the body expands in certain areas, or gravity is sucking you down into the ground. I mean, this is just a natural course of living. So the more you resist it, I find people really suffer from it. It really causes a lot of, and I laugh about the cosmetic industry and the skin industry with these creams. Some of them are very expensive. If they worked, right, then all the Hollywood movie stars that use those expensive creams would not look like they're aging, but they all look like they're aging. The ones who are old, I mean, it hasn't worked for any of them yet that I've seen them suddenly not have any wrinkles on their face or look like they're aging. It's the biggest myth out there, and they make a fortune on it, that industry, like that. So it's one way to just accept. Now it's your choice about, you want to color your hair, you want to, there's no problem with any of that. It's how much does it disturb your mind? How much does it disturb your mind? Like that. So that's what we want to look at, is keeping the mind more balanced, keeping the mind focused on Dharma practice. That's what really makes the difference. What am I investing in my consciousness? Let's think about that. The externals, this is going, by the way, the body is, it's not going to stick around with you, but the seeds in my consciousness, that's what's going to go on. I better take care of them. That's the real retirement account, the real investment. And people do that. There's all this worry and obsession and things about the money. And most people now, I know, that even are doing well, nobody's ever going to have enough money, and what is enough, right? But, you spend your life slaving to have a certain amount, and you get very little leisure time to really invest in your consciousness. It's just the way the world is kind of wired. So it's something to really think about, the choices you make about Dharma practice versus, having more money or having that job or doing that. Can you find the balance? Can you find the balance? Like that. I somehow was really fortunate early in life where I just went for the Dharma path, and I've never looked back. I don't regret any of it. Never, whatever it is, I just feel like I seem to have whatever I need. I live simply. If you live simply, it's okay. And then I just feel like this is what's important, is making those seeds in my consciousness. It keeps me happy, generally. Keeps me happy. So, and somewhat peaceful. It's not like I'm without problems like that, but I can manage them more easily. Feels like I can manage it. Wait, sorry, I'm losing this notebook here. Get that sorted. Okay. So I can manage it more easily. where I feel like I meet these people and it's all all this, and they have very little time for Dharma practice. And they'll say, well, yeah, I hope that I can get that thing. I've got the little house in the mountains now and I'm going to do retreat. And I just have a friend I lost to COVID, Dharma person, died of COVID. And, you know, building the career, all the things, and waiting to have this time. And now it's too late, you know, like that. You don't, it's really hard to think about, think about your priorities. I think it's really important, especially when we're dealing with a class like this. It's really important. Okay. So here's another little, and when I lead longer death and dying retreats, death and rebirth retreats, sometimes we do 10 days. We have a lot of meditation time. But something I'd like you to consider is a couple things, and you can do these longer in a weekend. Sometimes there's not enough time, but we often, when we have 10 days, we discuss some of these things. It would be really interesting if you'd like to put together your bucket list. Okay, some of you have already done this. What a bucket list is everything you want to do before you die in this life. Everything you want to do before you die. You know, some people say, I want to go to Hawaii. I want to, you know, visit all of the, well, this would be mine. I want to visit all the baseball parks in America. Okay. And Canada. Okay. I mean, not really. I'm a nun. Come on. How many baseball parks, right? But you know what I'm saying? All those things, you understand bucket list. Okay. Here's a second bucket list. This is the really important bucket list. The second bucket list is, this is something you can do in life, and you can change that bucket list over time, because when you're 30, that bucket list is really different than the bucket list you have when you're 60, right? Okay. Second bucket list is, what qualities would you like to develop in yourself before you die? Make a list of that. I think that's really interesting. What qualities would you like to develop in yourself before you die? And you might even have an aspect of that, rather than just qualities, of what kind of Dharma achievements would I like to do before I die? You know, it could be what kind of retreats you'd want to do, what kind of courses you'd like to study, what sort of meditations you'd like to master a little bit, realizations you might want to attain. It's all possible for you. It is all absolutely possible for you. So you could kind of include that in your second bucket list. Qualities you'd like to develop and some of the spiritual attainments you'd like to go for, like that. I think that's really an interesting one, more important one in a sense. And another thing that people do, another thing I ask people to do is to create their memorial service. What would they like? How would they like to structure their memorial service? What would they like? And it could be even, you can get elaborate, what kind of, you want a fancy casket, what kind of casket you want. You know, I mean, go into the details, what kind of music you want played, where you want it held, what you want people to read. Do you have any special poems or readings or something you want certain, who would you like to speak at it? Like that. What kind of food would you like to have served at your memorial? But it's something just to think about. I do know some people that plan things like that. And I think that's interesting if that's something, you know, some people have written their eulogies or have written their obituaries, things like, so all of that is part of that passage. If that's something that you'd like to explore, I think that'd be really interesting. And again, it doesn't have to be done in this weekend. It's something you could start a little bit in the weekend, just because what happens is when you start some of these activities, it really brings the death thing to the forefront. You really, you know, you're writing your obituary and you're thinking, you know, someday. I had a friend who did write her own. She knew she was dying, and she did write her own, and it was very nice. It was just like her. It was very humorous and light, and it just had the real taste of her. And some people choose to do it, or you can designate a friend that you want to do it, but you might have some things you want them to include. So, but when you do it and you start to put a pen to paper, if you do it like that, or if you're writing something on your computer, it starts bringing something up to the throat level. You start realizing this is coming, and it's coming soon. Just looking at the ages of all of you, you're all probably roughly around my age or so, some a little bit younger. It's coming soon to a body near you, death. Okay, it should be the marquee we have now at the movie theaters, like that. Somebody sent me something once like that had a funny thing. Another thing I've included for this class, I shared, and maybe Heather, is it part? I have a reading list that I had sent, I think earlier today or yesterday, that they can share. And what it is, as you know, there are so many books on death and dying. You can't put it all on one list. So what I've done is I've kind of picked and chosen. So I've got the list of our FPMT books and readings, and Dharma books are listed first, but I also have other things later in the on the list as well that I found very useful. I found very useful. So if you ever want to go through some of them and you just want to pick some up, and there's books on there. Some of you have read these books. I don't have the, let me see if I can, I just want to bring up the list for a second. If I can find it here. Okay. Yep, here it is. So I have a few things of the reading that's required for this Discovering Buddhism course. I have that at the top. And then I've got suggested reading, which start with all the Dharma books and different traditions of Dharma books, like that. And then I have more care for the dying books of other books that, and then some compilation of advice from FPMT. We have so much death materials on the FPMT sites, many, many things, especially the new updated book from Lama Zopa Rinpoche, How to Enjoy Death, Preparing to Meet Life's Final Challenge Without Fear. And so that's the new kind of death manual that has all the prayers in it you need to do, how to think about death, how to prepare for death, how to care for someone else, full of mantras and prayers. And so that's a really great Bible if you're a Tibetan Buddhist taking care of people. And I use that a lot for people, and actually have it on my phone and on my computer so I can send pieces to people, which I just did a few days ago to a friend who just lost her grandmother at 5 p.m. today in Mexico, like that. So that's very useful. And it's nice if you, need that, where people always say, what do? I get calls. It's good for us to learn what to do. And I'm going to talk about some of that coming up in the course. The Care for the Dying books, there's a few that I'll recommend for you to read for yourself, but to help others. So for people that lose long-time partners, and if you have a friend that lost a long-time partner, you haven't lost yours, you're not really sure how they feel, I found Joan Didion's The Year of Magical Thinking. So this came out a while ago, 2006. It's about her husband's sudden death. They were together for years. They lived together. They worked together. They wrote together in their apartment in New York. And you really get a sense of what it's like of her, 40-some year marriage and losing him, and what it was like for her. So I found that book really helpful. And that helped me help some other people that suddenly lost people of long-term partners and things. There's Atul Gawande, some of the newer books, Being Mortal, I found helpful. I think he's a doctor. Paul Kalanithi wrote When Breath Becomes Air, about his own death when he was diagnosed. And I think it was actually published after he died. And then there's Stephen Levine books, Who Dies? We used to be an incredibly popular book that's still current from the early 80s. That's often really helpful. One of my favorites from the late 90s, Christine Longacre, Facing Death and Finding Hope. Facing Death and Finding Hope is about her husband's journey with leukemia until he died. And very useful book. She was a student of Sogyal Rinpoche, so she's a Dharma student. And that book is really nice. And we're going to talk about her four paths of meaningful living and what you want to get together before you die, that I really found useful in that book. Okay, so that's just something I wanted to refer to. Any questions, anything like that?
I was just going to mention that reading list is also available on the materials within the link.
Thank you so much. Thank you very, very much. Yes, I did send it on to do that. And there's also some other things I'll reference in there in the next couple of days that we do of, there's a death absorption sheet that I added of, we're going to do a meditation tomorrow about that. Like that. And then you'll have a sheet on your own of what actually happens to the body when we're dissolving like that. So any other comments or questions? Okay, because I know it's a lot of information so far. I'm going to stop there for today. But again, remember, we've got our waking death meditation. Today's my last day, and set a motivation from there. It'd be really great to reflect on how you respond to change in your life. And you have other longer term things, the bucket list, you're writing your memorial, things like that. The 8 worldly dharmas, let's not forget. Can you think about, some of you are here with someone else, discuss with the other person, which is the worst? Which do you think is the worst of those and why? Of those 8 worldly dharmas, do reflect on those. Okay, we're going to dedicate the merit. So I'd like to take whatever positive energy we've created from spending this time. I want to thank you so much for your energy, for your participation. I hope you can join this weekend. And I'd like to dedicate whatever merit or positive energy we've created to all those who have recently passed away, especially in the last 49 days. A significant number in Tibetan Buddhism. May they immediately take a good rebirth where they can get enlightened to be of help to all living beings. And I'd like to dedicate to all those who are ill, especially with COVID, to be healed instantly. And for anyone who is ill in general, to have a healthy body and mind as soon as possible. And I'd like to also dedicate to Irene, who passed away a few hours ago, 94 years old in Mexico City, and really beautiful woman. And I'd like to dedicate to her peace of mind, for her family's ease of their discomfort in losing her, and for her to be free of suffering and immediately take a good rebirth to be a benefit to all. And also for the situation in the Middle East to de-escalate as soon as possible, and for India to be able to get, and all the other countries to make some strides with the pandemic, to be able to the vaccine to disseminate of people that want the vaccine, and may we find a way to get ahead of this pandemic at this point. I'd like to dedicate to that. Thank you so much. And I will hope to see you tomorrow.